right, are we ready, Ms. Amy? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this budget workshop. I don't have an agenda in front of me. I think there's one item on, and this is proprietary funds. So, Mr. Manager, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we're kind of down on the floor in the in our roundtable format because that worked so well for the commission in the last meeting. Seemed to stimulate a little more conversation. So so that we're going to repeat that format tonight. The other thing that we're doing, we have before you the handout is a 63 slide deck. But we are going to do like the last meeting and focus on the major projects. And the rest of the slide will be future reading material for those that want to do it. It's stuff you've seen before. It's trends, the number of customers, the consumption of utilities or generation of water, those types of things. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on any of those slides other than to mention them. We're going to focus on the projects and we're going to focus on rates. So I guess we'll go to slide number 1. It's one of these slides that we're not going to spend a lot of time on. It's our budget timeline and schedule. You've all seen that. So slide number 2 just shows the different funds that we have, and tonight we're focusing on the one there on the right, proprietary funds. These are our business funds. Slide number 3, budgeting assumptions. This kind of lays down all of the assumptions we made to put together our expense and revenue worksheets to determine utility rates. So we, as always, this is a commission policy. We develop rates that will generate revenue sufficient to meet our expenses. We're trying to break even. So we get our expenses pulled together, we get them as tight as we can, and then we evaluate what rate is needed to be put in place so that we'll generate revenues to meet that. All of our expenses include a 3.5% allocation to the general fund for administrative services. It covers cost of, say, the city attorney and the finance department and those types of things. And that we have a healthy investment in capital facilities. It's been a focus of this commission since I've been here, and it continues to be. In the electric group, we are projecting a 4% load growth, which is very healthy. Of the cities in the FMPA all requirements project, we have the most robust load growth and have for 3 to 5 years. We lead the way there. We are proposing a 1.8 increase in electric revenues. It says $1.80 a month. I think that's actually $2 a month. I probably made a mistake on this slide. I got it right further back. And our electric budget includes a 5% general fund transfer. On the water and wastewater side, we are projecting a 5% increase in on water consumption. Again, we have healthy growth in that area as well. We are proposing 3% increases in water and wastewater rates. Historically, the commission has asked us to keep our increases to 1.1, or the CPI. This year, the CPI is 1.17. Last year, it was a little bit higher, and we increased our water rates by the CPI, but we didn't increase our wastewater rates at all. This year, we went through a new permit renewal process with DEP, and DEP gave us a 5-year permit that kind of paints a picture of where we're going to have to go with our wastewater system. We had some aspirations that we might do advanced treatment, and when our permit came back, DEP advised us that those were no longer aspirational, those would be mandatory. We have some additional testing requirements and additional staffing requirements, and so we have put together a budget that shows a 3% increase, and don't really see that that's a one and done, and then we'll get back to 1% increases after this. This looks to be a 5-year step in, and that's whether we build a new plant or not. It's a 5-year step into nutrient removal. If we want to stay in the wastewater business, 5 years from now we'll have to provide nutrient removal, period. It won't be. Is that everybody? It's coming for everybody. We just happen to be first out of the gate. So we made that, they have, within the water management district, they have these things called BMAPs, where they have determined what you can do in any particular district, what your discharges have to be so that we will not degrade the Swanee River and the Santa Fe River and the groundwater. And so those were determined, finalized within the last year or two. We're one of the first permittees. We tried to use the hold up all of our neighbors around us as a defense, and they said, look, all those people, their permits don't expire for another 5 years, but when their permits expire, they're going to be in the same boat you are. And matter of fact, when I was watching the negotiations, we had a consultant and we had Jamie negotiating. I felt like that we probably scored more of a victory than anybody ever had, and the victory was we time delayed some things. Instead of being mandatory tomorrow, we'd get things pushed. You know, staffing requirements got pushed back 5 years. Our biosolids requirements got pushed back a year. And those were the things that, frankly, staffs felt like that was all they had latitude to do. When we held up our peers and said, why doesn't so-and-so have to do this? They said their time is coming. They will be in the same boat as you. And DEP, the people that give us the permit, they felt like their hands were tied as well. They said this is all coming from the state legislature. That the state legislature is committed to keeping the environment clean. It used to be a partisan thing that is more of a Republican thing to not be as environmentally friendly, or a Democratic thing to be very environmentally friendly. Nowadays it is nonpartisan. Everybody's environmentally friendly in Tallahassee. So having said all that, even with the proposed increases for water and wastewater at 3%, we remain the lowest residential water and wastewater provider in our peer group. On the electric side, we remain in the middle of the pack. So we'll jump into that. Also, just want to tell you the next slide. Oh, commission considerations. I must have double skipped a page.
Are we required to test the soil out there at the sewage plant?
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Jamie. So there's a number of tests that we do out there. We do a lot of monitoring for how much nitrogen and things we put into the soil with both our wastewater, our liquid effluent, and our solids. And all of those standards are getting more and more stringent.
But have we ever had a problem with it being not within the legal compliance? Or?
Actually, Jamie,
Yeah.
would you mind coming up and just move over? We ask you a lot of questions through these things. We need you on the microphone so I don't have to just repeat everything you just said and mess it up.
I can speak to that, Mr. Mayor. We do not exceed any of our current permit requirements. That being said, the new permit greatly reduces the amount of total nitrogen that we can apply per acre on the site. So while we currently do not exceed it, as part of this process, it's been greatly reduced what we can apply moving forward.
And if I understand correctly, the way we currently dispose, if those permit limits went into effect today, we would exceed it. We're going to have to change our ways in order to comply with our new permit.
That is correct. If the new limits for biosolids application were effective today, if the new limits for total nitrogen and the effluent disposal were effective today, we would immediately be in violation of our permit. Basically, this stays those requirements on the total nitrogen for 5 years, but there is steps that we have to meet in the next 5 years to demonstrate we have a plan and engineering documents as to how to get there on effluent disposal. In the next 6 months, we have to do a nutrient management plan that demonstrates how we will reduce the amount of total nitrogen that we're applying from our biosolids and demonstrate how we will comply moving forward.
It's a tough new world we're living in environmentally. Commission considerations, and feel free to ask questions. That's exactly what we'd have you do. We're going to talk about water, wastewater, and electric rates, and we're going to review our capital improvement program plans. So long-term planning, these are kind of the big ticket item capital projects or extraordinary non-capital projects that we're working on. So you're familiar with most of these, and we're going to go through them all individually to share them with you and give you our thoughts and how we planned them in this budget. Start with the Twin Pairs. As you know, the Twin Pairs is a FDOT project, but there's a component that would impact us fiscally that has to do with the utilities that are located in those right-of-ways. So we have, Jamie in particular has been negotiating with DOT that all of the utilities on Northwest First Avenue, the upgrades in there, we should be able to get DOT to pay for. And that particularly is going to affect electric and wastewater. We may end up having to pay for some of the water costs, but of the 3 utility costs associated with this project, water is the least costly. We're still working to negotiate with them to try to get them to pick up 100% of the cost. But I think right now we've got commitments where they're probably picking up at least 2/3 of what our anticipated costs will be. The final costs, though, are to be determined. We're still working on the electric design. We have a conceptual design on water and wastewater, but we haven't started that. Actually, they're going to perform that for us, and I think they're working on pulling the work scope together for us now. So next year's budget includes the designs for water and wastewater, and we don't know exactly what that would cost, but we understand that DOT will pick up their fair share of the cost, which would be 100% of the utilities, wastewater and electric utilities on first.
So they haven't given any indication when this project is supposed to occur?
They have given us ranges. It was scheduled to start in 27-28 fiscal year. That's the plan that has been out there. But with all the talk in the last year of there being infrastructure funding, an infrastructure package, they felt like they needed to complete the design. So they have been rushing the design. They intend to have the design complete in the spring of 22 and be shovel ready just in time to get not ARPA, but infrastructure funding from the feds. What I'm hearing from folks in the industry is there's never been a time in history where there's more federal funding available than the next 2-year period. And DOT believes that they'll get this project funded, which means we could be under construction as early as January 23 would probably be the earliest. Probably more likely sometime in late 23 would be when we'd see work begin. We think the construction would begin in 23 and that the non-DOT funded facilities would be funded either through retained earnings or through debt service. The other things we're working on, we're asking DOT to take our stormwater and treat it in their basins, particularly at the City Hall facility, because stormwater would eat up a lot of land here. We've been working very close with DOT, and I think they've agreed to do that. We're confirming with them that they've agreed to do that, but they've been very amenable to negotiating and trying to lessen our costs. Our next step is going to be, since cold storage is staying, they had agreed to put a parking lot there, and the commission said, hey, would you see about closing 254th and making that parking? I'm going to ask them if they were going to build a parking lot where cold storage is, would they build the parking lot where we're the areas that the city's designated, and hopefully we can get them to pay for that parking lot as well. Any questions about the FDOT project? All right, we'll move on to the next slide, which is elevated.
Go over long-term planning.
This is long-term planning.
The first page, we have some stuff in here.
Okay, well,
Is that just over
yeah,
half, just say what
that was a list of all the projects that we're gonna see. Every one of these bullet items has a slide.
Okay.
Okay, so the second bullet point on long-term planning is elevated water tank. I'm sorry. Yeah, slide or 10. So we've discussed fairly frequently in the commission chambers that our water system lacks Storage volume, I think we have a total of 500,000 gallons in storage volume. Is that correct, or is it less? Right at 500,000, and we should have probably 1.5 million. It would 3 times daily ADF, so we should have 1.5 million. So we have plans to construct elevated storage tank east of town, where it will provide fire flow on State Road 26. We have plans to construct an elevated storage tank south of town, near Champions. So we are proposing to move forward on this project next fiscal year through a combination of using ARPA funds, and when we get towards the end, we'll tell you that our plan is to allocate a certain percentage of our 2.6 million in ARPA funds towards this and fund the rest through debt service. That tank would probably be in the 500,000 gallon. That's what we think is the right number. When we get into design, we would confirm what that exact number needs to be. Again, the big benefit is the city, is it brings us into compliance on required water storage. I think technically we're out of compliance right now. I don't think anybody's holding our feet to the fire. But if someone came in and did a water system audit, they would identify that, hey, you don't have enough storage capacity for your average daily flows and for the amount of consumption you get on a daily basis.
Could add to that, Mr. Mayor, when it really becomes extremely problematic now, we're required by the Florida Administrative Code to take those tanks down and do engineering inspections and cleanouts inside them once every 5 years. When we take the smaller elevated tank we have down, it affects us a little bit. When we take our large one down at Easton, it's normally down for several days while that work's being performed. It really compromises our ability to ensure that we have no pressure issues and adequate fire flow.
It's a great point, Jamie. Any questions about this project?
What's the timeline on this? Sounds like there's actually some need to be moving on this one. I know that Stefan's given us donating some land for the water tower out there. Is that right? Is that what we're thinking?
He's going to build the water tower out
He's
there.
going to build the water tower. What's the timeline for that?
Slower. He won't. He's going to be
not gonna move
behind
until he
this
has
one.
that.
It'll probably be fiscal year 23 before that goes up. It's one of the first things in his development, but by the time he gets through his site engineering and all that sort of stuff, and then begins construction, it probably wouldn't come online until 23. We propose this one to do the design this fiscal year, start it in October, and as soon as design complete, we'd be ready to go to bid. We do not have land. That land acquisition
He said a
would be.
plan.
Oh.
Joe, you said a plan for this? Land. Okay, you were right.
We've
Land.
been eyeballing land out off south side of State Road 26 in the area of 202. I think you connected us with the Gravely. But she said she didn't want to look at a big tank, so we realized that's probably going to take some elected official involvement to get her comfortable with looking at a big tank. Or we've also had discussions with the developer about it. We need a half acre of land to maintain it. We need about an acre to build it, but so we get temporarily use of a half acre and permanent use of a half acre. And whoever we get the land from, especially if it's a developer, it'll probably be an in-kind donation. They'll probably donate the land to the city to have the benefits of an elevated water storage tank in terms of fire flow and fire protection.
Just to kind of expand upon that, Mr. Mayor, it's not necessarily just about the available piece of property. If there is a piece of property that's available, we also have to do some geotech work to determine the suitability. If it has some karst features, it could increase the cost of the foundation. So we have to verify not only do we have a willing landowner, but that it's actually suitable for the construction.
We talked about pricing because the Grayleys mentioned not having it, but the manager talked about having a different style, but it was more expensive. Is that correct, Mike? We were talking about just the way the pump system has to work, and if we didn't have the elevated. because of what they
Yeah,
asked for.
If we didn't do an elevated tank, we could do a ground storage tank. But when you do it, there's advantages and disadvantages. Ground storage tanks are these concrete dome-looking tanks you see around. But what happens when you put water in a ground storage tank is it loses its pressure. Its pressure is atmosphere. So when you want to put it back out in the system, you got to repump it, and that energy costs money. It's more flexible. You know, Jamie can turn on the pumps anytime. But I think that for a city like Newberry, I think Jamie feels pretty certain that elevated storage is preferable. I would second that.
I agree, elevated storage is the most dependable for this size. There is advantages to a high service pump, ground level style tank, but there's increased maintenance costs, electrical costs. It operates a little differently instead of letting gravity generate your pressure.
Just food for thought.
Absolutely.
We may have to swing one with it.
Agreed. I mean, it's possible that we would strike out with something elevated, but you know, in my experience, people don't. I mean, it's not terribly uncommon for people to object to an elevated water tank, but it's not super common that they do. People object to wastewater plants. They object to electrical substations. Lift stations are smelly, but usually these aren't so unpleasant to look at. I'd say that more times than not, people are neutral to them.
Just put my picture on the,
Yeah, that wouldn't be objectionable. Wastewater plant expansion, we've talked about this quite a bit. Jamie, as I mentioned before, Jamie renegotiated the permit, so we have a new 5-year operating permit. The biggest advantage out of that permit was we increased the plant capacity from 499,000 gallons per day to 560. So we picked up 61,000 gallons per day of additional capacity, and that will last us until we construct a new treatment plant. We think, depending on growth rates, that added capacity is needed by 2025, and at our current pace, we would have new facilities operational by 2025. We are currently in a planning phase, which is kind of phase 1. Next phase would be design, and the next phase would be construction. If we get through the planning phase and the design phase and our growth rate isn't matching what our projections, we'll probably sit for a spell and not spend the money on a brand new wastewater plant. We'd have to negotiate with DEP about getting our permit extended, but if we had a design ready to go and our flows weren't coming up as fast as we anticipated, I have no doubts that they would allow us to go an extra 2 or 3 years until we were ready to pull the trigger on that. You know, we usually with these types of facilities, you want to bring capacity online and what we call just in time. You don't want to, you know, if this one has a capacity of 560,000 gallons per day, you'd like to bring on the next gallon when you get to capacity. It helps spread the cost of the debt service, make sure we have enough revenue coming in so that we can cover those debt service costs. We are in the planning phase, as I mentioned. We're about 50% through. We got a 30% submittal, and I know here we're working on the 60% submittal. That plan is looking at advanced treatment, and we're working with the cities of Trenton, Archer, and High Springs to do that. All in all, for as many meetings as we're having, I don't feel uber confident that any of those 3 communities are going to pull the trigger. Little things like timing just get in the way, you know, so nobody needs our timing exactly, but we'll have a good plan, and hopefully we will be able to seek additional funding that would incentivize those communities to give us a hard look. If there's no additional funding that comes with from the legislature, I don't see it as being cost effective at all. If the legislature tries to incentivize it, then I think people will look hard, particularly Archer. I don't think DEP is going to let Archer move forward on their current plan. Right now, it looks like that expansion would take us to 1.1 to 1.2 MGD. The plan itself would be that, whatever we need, plus what anybody else needs. So if Archer says we want a half MGD, we'd add that on top of our 1.1 to 1.2, and that's what we'd build. They'd pay for their share of the capacity. Estimated cost for the new facility is right at $25 million. So we'll get some, DEP's program gives us some debt forgiveness right out of the gate, so we wouldn't, while the construction cost may be $25 million, the amount of debt service we take on would be something less than that. We need to be really aggressive. I figure we need $5 million in grants if we're going to have an affordable debt service that we feel comfortable with, and that's our goal for the next 3 years, is to try to beat the bushes and get $5 million in grant funding available to us. Any questions about wastewater treatment? And Jamie, you have anything to add? He's got a lot more expertise than I do in this area. All right, next we'll talk about the wastewater treatment operating facility. And actually, because Jamie just was intimately familiar with this, the reason the slide's up here is it's not a capital improvement, but it is leading greatly to the need for the 3% increase in wastewater rates. Maybe Jamie can kind of go through this slide and tell you some of the things that are in our new permit that are increasing our cost.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Just as an example, the laboratory analysis that under our old permit was required once a month is now required once a week. There are some engineering reports that have to be accomplished, some of them quarterly, some of them annually, from now until the new plant is built or the permit is renewed. Capacity analysis reports, nutrient management plans, step-in plans as to how you would meet total nitrogen for effluent disposal. Every one of those reports has to be produced by a professional engineer and signed and sealed by a professional engineer. It's something that has to be certified before it can be sent to DEP. We've seen some increased costs in sodium hypochlorite, which is our disinfection agent not only for the wastewater plant but for the water system. That particular chemical has went up about 12.5 to 13%. So that's just a few examples of some of the things that the permit has brought forth.
I see the lowest bullets down there. So the additional reporting that is in our new permit about, Jamie, tell us where you are with plans for expansion and how much capacity you have available. Currently, it looks like that's increasing our operating costs by $50,000 a year.
That is correct.
Maybe I'm just, they give us all these requirements, but they ain't giving us no funding or no backing. So,
Correct.
and, I mean, if the county can just tell them all to go pound sand, I reckon we can too, right? Ain't that the way it works?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, yes, you could take that tack, but understand this is also the entity that approves every water construction and wastewater collection permit in Newberry or any other municipality. So basically, they turn around and they put you under consent order, but you cannot make any more wastewater line extensions. You cannot make any more water line extensions.
Well, you talk about employee additional man hours, additional employees, that weighs on the city as far as their budget. So, I mean.
It absolutely weighs on our ratepayers.
Yeah.
And the best way to spread these costs is to have more ratepayers, but it's a mandate.
You know, this comes from the state. This ain't us wanting to raise rates.
Agreed.
And some of these issues not only go along with the new permit renewal, but on the water and wastewater side, all of your requirements are based on 1 year level of treatment to your population. You know, 0 to 3,300 population, you have sampling schedules where you might do something monthly, quarterly, or annually. Once you bust 3,300, some of those things become weekly, some of those things become daily. Once you exceed 30,000 in population, all of those things become much more frequent. So as you experience growth, not only do you have the increased cost and the increased regulations involved with that, but it's an evolving process as your population and your capacity increases.
Do we still have to take all this stuff down to Ocala? Isn't that where we used to get it tested?
We are currently part of a consortium of several local municipalities that use a contract lab in Ocala, Aquapure. We're looking at, there's only one lab that I'm aware of that is left in Gainesville that can do some of these analyses. At one point in time, there was several in Gainesville that could do them. We are exploring pricing for that.
And when we talk about regional, Jamie and I were talking about this early. Sometimes you talk about a common treatment facility, one centrally located treatment facility that everybody utilizes, but regional's bigger. Jamie is exploring our sodium hypochlorite vendor is dramatically increased our pricing. So Jamie is working with sister utilities around us to explore another option where Newberry may not have enough buying power to incentivize someone to sell to us at a good rate, but you put Newberry and High Springs and Trenton and Alachua together, and okay, now they can make a route, drop off sodium hypochlorite, and we can get a better value.
And that's what I was thinking, actually, with regards to the testing and whether or not there was enough capacity in the area. If everybody's going to be going up, whether or not we could have a facility here that people go to and do their testing. You all remember Jim Stainfield. He used to work for a company in Jonesville, Nicasse, but I don't know if they do this kind of testing. They did a lot of treatment testing for EPA compliance with a lot of wood product facilities. I don't know if you're aware of that or ever asked them.
This particular type sampling for water and wastewater requires that the lab be NELAP certified. I used to have an in-house NELAP certified lab at my previous employer. Some of the gas chromatograph and some of the other equipment cost into the hundreds of thousands of dollars range. To run that particular facility from a county standpoint costs us about $3 million a year. And right now, Aquapure is NELAP certified. I believe this other entity, I cannot call their name off the top of my head, in Gainesville is, but I'm open to looking at any lab and any cost-saving measure. Just for the Commission's awareness, and it's not something I did, but for the past 25 years, even back when I was in Chiefland years ago, City of Newberry, City of Trenton, Town Across City, City of Chiefland actually work together, have a schedule. Any samples that have to be taken, we rotate and take turns. We meet at one place, gather all the samples together. Whichever municipality's particular turn it is, they haul them all the way to Ocala for us. So one, we're not tying up staff, and it's not all on multiple municipalities. So we're open to exploring any kind of cost-saving measure from whether it's operations or the actual construction.
I think the city commissioner, when he called,
Before we move on, I just want to go back to Commissioner Clark's comment, because I think it's worth repeating many times that when it comes to things like these, 95% of the costs that we incur are not our decisions. There are things that are coming in from the federal or the state level. Somebody somewhere has decided that they have a better plan, and it's an unfunded mandate. And so it makes it tough to absorb all the things we're being told we have to do, and then the things we are trying to do locally all at the same time. But when you're talking to your state and federal representatives, good questions to ask. Mr. Manager?
Yeah, my expectation is our state and federal representatives aren't aware that some law that was gonna, seems to be protecting the environment, is gonna result in a $2 to $3 a month increase in every citizen in Newberry's wastewater bill. And that may continue for the next 5 years, continue increasing by that. I mean, that's a long ways to go for them, but I think that said properly, so that there's awareness, maybe they begin to ask those questions about, well, what's the impact going to be to the folks that are voting for me to be in office? The other thing I just point out is you know, when I look around at all the utilities in the region, none of them have a Jamie Jones. We are fortunate. Jamie is on top of this stuff. He's aware of it. I was made aware today by one of our sister cities that does not know about certain state laws related to rate making, and they have never complied with those laws. And some resident becomes aware of those laws and takes them to task, they're going to have to give a whole lot of money back. So just part of the value of having a professional staff, having a Jamie Jones on board, he is well equipped to keep us out of harm's way when it comes to our utility system. Next slide, please. Additional staffing. This is, as we mentioned, we've been talking about this for a few months. We developed a 10-year staffing plan, and we have staged it out over 10 years. We ask each of our departments to look at what we would be needing and staff-wise to continue operation with the growth levels we're seeing, and we treat it like our CIP. We're going to reevaluate it every year. We're a little bit behind the ball on staffing citywide. We're not trying to solve it all in 1 year, but over a 10-year period, we want to get to the point that we are appropriately staffed to maintain a level of service. This year, within the water and wastewater budget, or the utility budgets, we are proposing 2 new positions, Assistant Director of Utilities and Public Works and a water and wastewater operator. So that, the water and wastewater operator is part of a step-in plan that in 5 years from now, we've got to have a much greater presence at our wastewater plant. We got to have an operator there 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. What's our current requirement?
Currently, we're required to have an operator there 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, with 2 weekend visits.
Yeah, those are 2-hour visits on the weekend.
So this year, we are looking for our assistant director and our wastewater operator.
Correct. And then the plan, which I think we've distributed to you in the past, and we'd be happy to distribute again, shows different, how we've staggered it out. So hopefully it's, a couple every year, 2 to 3 every year, rather than, we need 6 in 1 year. Go ahead. Do you have something else to add?
Or just to weigh in on that with the operators, you don't want to wait until the facility's constructed and go out and try to get green staff that know nothing about Newberry. You want to have a chance for them to learn the existing collection system, the existing plant, and help you in the process of getting the plant built, take some ownership in the process of getting the plant built. They'll operate and maintain it better, and they'll be trained to the level you need them trained for Newberry by the time it's operational.
Any questions about staffing? Oh, I'm sitting here clicking my mouse, and that does nothing. A Utilities and Public Works Operations Center, I'd say of the good news tonight is that while this is a project that's been identified, it's at least 5 years out. Concept, though, is currently we have our Public Works and Utilities that are operating out of what we affectionately refer to as the yard. It's across the street from Lois Fort Park. We're kind of out of room on that site, and it's about to be Highway State Road 26 frontage. So as we are, where it really impacts us this year is we're having negotiations for land acquisition at our wastewater plant. We believe that it would be appropriate to obtain enough land to build a public works or operations facility, operations center on that site at some point in the future when it's appropriate. So we're thinking 10-acre site. We haven't estimated a cost. It's a little bit too far out, but it would have office area. Right now we have 1 or 2 portables on site. We have 1 portable on site. We've filled up every office. We need an expanded warehouse, and we have appropriate outdoor storage, but we think that in that 5 to 10 year time frame, we'll need more outdoor storage. Things to stockpile materials that we use for utility construction or roadway construction, lime rock, fill material, those types of things, concrete rubble to repair sinkholes. Although I'm not sure why we do that, because we never have sinkholes in Newberry.
Another reason to bring it up at this time, as you're looking to expand your wastewater plant, if this is a concept you want to move forward with, it gives you an idea, an opportunity to look at economy of scale. Instead of building redundant facilities in 2 different places, there may be some facilities that can accommodate not only the wastewater side, but the rest of the public works functions, and you only build it one time.
Great point.
Are we talking about 10 acres adjacent to the current wastewater treatment?
Correct.
Is that what you said?
And-
Would that be part of what
Correct.
we're negotiating right now?
Yeah. We're having conversations with the property owner. I think it's 93 acres that we're looking at, that they prefer to sell. They don't want to keep any land. They want to sell everything they've got. They have 93 acres available, somewhere in the 90s. We know we need 55 for the wastewater plant at minimum. The planning study will tell us if it's a shade more than that. We're having conversations with the compost facility. They could use 15 acres. The county has talked to us about a meat processing facility. They think that would be, 5 to 10 acres. Public Works compound could be 10 acres. So we're trying to figure out what will be on a campus that will all make sense. We'll be all good neighbors. We've learned a lesson that residential isn't a very good neighbor to a wastewater plant because, hate to say it, but Newberry's sewage smells also. So we think these are all a collection of things that would be a good neighbors. The Alachua County Fire Rescue and Newberry Fire Department are working on a training facility for western Alachua County that would actually serve everything from here to the coast. So every fire department west of us would train in it. And yeah, that's a great idea. It's a long list, but rural collection center and household hazardous, we have room for that. So we have a long list of what the candidates are. They may not all make it on the side. They could. I'll give you an example. On the compost facility, my intuition tells us that Newberry procuring the land and donating it to them in exchange for them taking care of our biosolids from now to eternity is a very good financial deal for us. Our biosolids disposal costs would be very high if we didn't have this compost facility associated with us. So we'll try to do that type of analysis on everything that's on site. If it's a better deal for Newberry to donate land in exchange for, let's say, a road improvement on County Road 337, let's put in a bunch of turn lanes that we're going to need, and the county's good at that. We may say, hey, county, we'll give you 5 acres, but you need to improve County Road 337 and put in all the turn lanes that are going to be needed. That's kind of way out there. Obviously, those are agreements that are come before this board for final approval, but that's the kind of thinking we have going in. Got anything to add, Jamie? And then finally, we talked a little bit about American Rescue Plan at either an earlier city commission meeting or at one of our first budget workshops. And we listed about 10 or 12 different ideas that we had come up with on how we could spend the ARPA money, and we continue to learn more about how we can spend that money. We have vetted that the projects listed on this slide would all be eligible for use with the ARPA money. We have proposed to the commission, that of the $2.6 million that we've been awarded, that we apply $2 million of that to these projects, the state road water and force main projects that are not constructed until the lift station is complete. You remember, we built a lift station, but we didn't fund the last component of that. So we could use up to $9,000 to complete that and put that project to bed. Apply $500,000 of it towards the elevated storage tank on State Road 26, and the rest of that project would be funded through a state revolving fund grant be very affordable, be paid for through development fees. And then apply $600,000 to the downtown connector road and Southwest 15th upgrade that would help us buy down any proposed debt service on those projects. And then the remaining ARPA funds, we propose that the commission look over the rest of the project or develop new project lists and apply and utilize it for that. So it's kind of a starting point for discussion. It's our recommendation, but of course it's the commission's decision.
Mike, is the companion sewer line down 26 not eligible for ARPA funds?
It is. That's the
Is that
that's
the
the force main.
force main
That's the
projects?
force main projects.
Okay.
That's it.
Tim?
Are these numbers the maximum allowable towards these projects, or could we put the $600,000 towards the downtown connector, because that was north of a couple million?
The caveat with the ARPA is in the ARPA, water and wastewater infrastructure is very clearly identified as an eligible expenditure. So you could put more money towards your downtown roads, but only the water wastewater component of it is eligible. There's a way we could try and claim economic development, but it's very murky and unclear at this point. So the $600,000 I've put here is to pay for the water and wastewater components. Yes, sir. You could, if you wanted to spend the remaining of the $600,000, the elevated storage tank is a $2.5 million project, and we've put $500,000 towards that $2.5 million to buy down the debt. If you wanted to use the remaining $600,000, that would be the easiest project to apply it to. The $900,000 completely covers those projects.
What about a Quint?
You cannot use it for a Quint. You can buy an ambulance with it, but you can't buy a fire truck.
And one of the things to keep in mind with the ARPA funds, though, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Only one question on the ARPA, can we use it on any of the, getting the roof done for our building at the,
No, sir.
no?
City Hall?
No. You could maybe use a very, very small portion for City Hall, but not enough to make a difference.
And
Tim, are you still?
No question.
Mike?
So how far out will the force main go with this project?
the street number that it will extend to the east to is 226. It's the road that goes down to the mines. It's directly across the street from all Florida fences. It's where the lift station is. The lift station is all the way at the north end of that road, I guess, which would be the east side of Kamoka Ranch, where the power lines come across.
There's a DOT retention pond on 226 when you turn to go north to the mines. It's located on the south side of that retention pond, on the east boundary of Kamoka Ranch.
So it's not anywhere near.
Okay. That's Dudley Farms. It is shy of, there we are.
200 acres difference between where they're trying to turn and get the distance or
Yeah.
300,
Here,
whatever that.
all right, so here's Canterbury, and this is the road that goes down. Here's where the new IFAS extension offices would be. Here's 226. No, is it one more? Here's 226. There you go. You go on down past, this is all Kamoka Ranch, and there's a road that goes due north down to these mines, and our lift station is going to be right here. It's under construction today, so we'll build a force main from here. It'll come all the way out to State Road 26. It'll cross State Road 26, and then it will be constructed west all the way to essentially Hardee's in the church.
And God, I'm highly supportive of this project.
Thank you.
But I believe that when this is complete, we need to have had the conversation about LDRs, about overlay zoning, because we've got water there. Once the sewer's there, and we're going to have people lining up the door ready to do things, and we need to be very clear at that point what we want, how we want it built, and it doesn't need to be our preference. It needs to be written down, so that we empower staff to, don't even come in front of them and ask for an exemption or to do it less than that. That's what it's got to be. Even if it's just an overlay zoning, am I saying that right, overlay
Correct.
zoning, right? Of that area, because once that companion sewer line is there,
But what can be done about these people coming in, getting approval for the project, and then after they get approval, then they come back to change their project? That's happened several times already.
Commission.
yeah, but if we have the commission just say no, but if it's written in the LDRs, then they can change the project, but it still has to be up to the standard that we've written. That's what we need to get our LDRs increased so that you can shift gears and you can do something else, but it still has to be built to a certain standard. Or the commission could just say, no, this is what you said you were gonna do, this is what's approved, if you wanna change, go back to square one and start the process all over again, because that's really the only way we can ensure that every single step is met.
Yeah, I
When we
mean-
shift gears halfway.
The way they're doing it now, they're bypassing the planning and zoning board and coming straight to the city commission and getting things changed, and that doesn't seem like the right thing to do to me.
And to the mayor's point,
Okay.
to the mayor's point, there's a number of developers out that way that are waiting. They're watching the process. They are aware that there will be some sort of enhanced standard. They all welcome it. They all indicate that they're planning to build to an advanced standard as well, and they think that if everybody else is building to an advanced standard, it's just going to make the whole thing better. So they're excited about the opportunity. They're not necessarily excited about the time it's going to take to put in place, but they all believe it's the right thing to do for their developments and for Newberry. So I don't think we're going to get a lot of pushback.
I was gonna say, other than them, having the zoning already, those requirements already in place, the responsibility still falls on us to tell them no when it comes down to it. So if we don't have a backbone to tell them no, then they're gonna keep coming back. But it's just kinda like what we did with the campground. They wanted 50% permanent units, and we said no. You gotta lower that down to a third, or to 30% or whatever it was. But the LDRs, in my head, they start at a different point, so there's less room to really come down off of.
Any questions about the American Rescue Plan Act?
Let's pause there for a second.
Sure.
And see if we have any public questions or comments on anything you've heard tonight, any proposals. Can you come up here or come right to this microphone, either one?
And, just to follow up, we've been talking about the big projects and what they have cost. Now we're gonna talk about how we fund them.
Just a comment about something Monty said about them bypassing planning and zoning when they want a variance. Sometimes they don't bypass planning and zoning, but the material that is presented to planning and zoning is such that it's like the city wants it this way. I mean, how do I say this exactly right? It's the material is presented in a way that they're supporting this builder in this request he's making. Whereas maybe they shouldn't, but I don't know exactly what their job is in that kind of case. But I've sat up here enough, or sat in enough of those meetings to hear, whereas the way the material is presented, planning and zoning is like encouraged to approve. So then it comes to the commission, and the commission either approves or asks the hard questions.
Well, and I think that, to Ms. Peggy's point, I can't remember a plan, something coming to the P&Z that didn't have staff's recommendation in a while. There's been a couple over the course of my decade, but pretty much everything that comes, because staff doesn't let it get here until it's going to have a staff recommendation to support, and oftentimes staff is recommending to support with some caveats, but also sometimes we get people who are coming in front of us and they've told staff one thing, and then they get in front of the dais and the story changes, and then everybody gets kind of confused. And we have made it clear that we want to be pro we want to be friendly to our residents and our developers. We want to make it easy to accomplish these things. So, and again, that's why I think this comes down to, we gotta have it written down, you know? Whether it's in the LDRs, whether it's, we write it down, because that just leaves much less wiggle room for people to even ask the question, right? Because then staff can say, well, your LDRs, they say this. Monty?
Get rid of these small, they did it to money on that last, they went from 5,000 down to 4,000 on those lots. That was our biggest hang-up. And that's what they did, they come back to us and wanted to squeeze it back down, to make smaller lots.
For reducing the percentage of commercial.
Right.
They make more lots, so they make more money.
They reduced the commercial property out north of here.
Yep.
So,
I'm gonna say, we need to definitely dig into this.
well,
And
I don't know, this is not really
I would just offer that one of the things that we really work on as your staff team is listening to what someone says I'm trying to accomplish and helping them navigate the process to get there. Doesn't mean that we think it's a great idea. We'll be candid if we don't think it's a great idea, and we're really candid with developers when they come in. But even if we don't think it's a great idea and they say we insist and we want to move forward with it, we help them navigate the process to get in front of somebody, because that seems to be the feedback we're hearing from the rest of the world is they don't like it when staff decides that development is good or bad. That's what elected officials are supposed to be doing, making decisions. And if you speak to developers from Gainesville or Alachua County, that's their biggest challenge is we can't get past staff. Staff doesn't like an idea. We don't know what the elected officials think about it. Staff just railroad us out of town before we ever get a chance to pitch it to an elected official. So our tact has been, and we think we've heard this from the commission, is you tell us what you're trying to accomplish. We're going to try to set you up to comply with our LDRs to get there and put it in front of our bodies that make those decisions. And we'll be candid with our recommendation that we think this is a good idea or bad idea. So just some insights as to how we're approaching these projects.
Mike, will you go back to the American Rescue Plan Act?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think all of these are worthwhile, but what I would like to do with the ARPA money is things that are going to repay us back. So I see the sewer line, that's going to get commercial growth, it's going to get residential, it's going to increase the tax base. The city of Newberry will utilize that federal funding to invest in our future, and it'll be good for us going down the line. You know, and we're about to talk about how we're going to fund other things, so maybe the remainder can be used on some of those things, maybe it can't. I would also just put in a pitch that sometimes it's good to do a host of smaller projects that are visible around town as well. And so, you know, we've got a list of things that we can spend that money on. You know, we've got the big ticket items, and you know, we've got some big ticket things we're trying to get done. So if we can pay down some debt with it or keep us from incurring the debt, certainly that would jump to the forefront in my brain. But, you know, in talking to residents, little things here and there, you know, that beautify the town, you know, call it economic development, right? Those kind of things. That's what people see, you know, and they don't see the sewer line under the ground for 20 years, right? Then the tax base is there and they appreciate that. But we also might want to think about what can we do with this money that folks will immediately, visibly see that we've invested in the community as well.
Mr. Mayor, I fully agree with you. Part of what we've identified in some of these projects are some of those projects that we're going to do kind of either way. And so it does free up other money, you know, lessens the debt service that in money that isn't restricted, that the commission could spend on those sorts of projects. You always spend your most restricted money first, and then it frees up your unrestricted money. So, for example, the elevated storage tank, reducing that by $500,000 reduces our debt service by $25,000 a year in your water system. That's $25,000 a year you now have to go do
Something else.
something else.
You know, lost my train of thought. Maybe we'll come back to it. Tim, were you reaching for the mic?
Well, I can't remember if, I think it was you and I had a conversation offline one day about, is there a way to kind of beautify the older buildings over on the south side over here, that we could get a more consistent look on those buildings? You know, whether or not the owners could necessarily pay for that up front all at one time, whether or not we could do the project and get repayment over time back or something like that. That just jumped in my head. I didn't want to forget about it. Whether or not we can entertain that in any of these conversations is another story. But
That was my thought was, is there a way to tie that 600, the ARPA money, into the CRA so that the CRA projects that we're trying to do, we don't have to expend the entire CRA monies. We can supplement or leverage the monies together to go after other grants, or tie them together so that our businesses downtown, that way we're not the ones necessarily incurring it, but we can say, look, you know, we're going to put $100,000 of ARPA money and $100,000 CRA money, and each business can apply for a grant. And as long as you agree to a color scheme and a motif, then you're pretty much going to get it. And it may not be the beautification projects; it may be the underground utilities. The CRA is the beautification. This money is the underground.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's a very interesting idea, and maybe we can use the ARPA money until more and more communities start going through the process of seeing what is and isn't denied. I'm not sure. We do have a consultant under contract who's helping us with these decisions, telling us what is and isn't approved, so I'll definitely reach out to them and talk to them. One option that does exist that's in the Commission's authority is historic redevelopment ad valorem tax abatements. The Commission could adopt a tax abatement for the historic areas that say if you invest into your property, we will abate your taxes, your property taxes, on a yearly basis for 10 years, half of whatever your property taxes are, 75%. I know staff looked into it before. We've not done a ton of research. Yeah, so that you invest in your business, and then the city says, okay, you get a 15% discount on your property taxes for 10 years. It's similar to your development refund, except for it goes through your property taxes. 5 years.
Bet you wish we had done that before you did 1906. But that may be that may incentivize him to go, because he's got plans for the next story. He's got plans for some outside dining if he can work that through. I know that cold storage would be a great project for something like that. I mean, in 3 slides, that remaining 600K may disappear like that. So,
if it's the Commission's will, we'll do research into that tax abatement program and bring it back for discussion.
yeah, awesome. Good idea. All right, let's, any more questions? Next slide.
All right, so
Electric.
the manager has tasked me with raising rates now. I'm going to skip through most of our normal backup documentation that shows customer increases and consumption increases and those sorts of things, unless the Commission wants me to spend any time on it. The general fact of all of these is that customer base is growing, consumption is growing, city is growing. So, skipping right through, as you can see, our consumption's up, bulk power costs are up, our bulk power rate is down. We base our energy forecast based off of how many customers we have and how much energy they're going to use. Your total bulk power cost, as the Commission is aware, is created through 2 different charges. We have an embedded rate in your customer rate, as well as your monthly PCA. The combination of those 2 is what pays for your bulk power cost every month.
Bulk power cost being what we pay FMPA for the energy we buy.
In terms of how we split up the revenue, we receive in your electric fund a variety of different charges. Those charges go to pay for different portions of your electric department. The customer charge or the monthly charge goes straight into your operations. Demand use charge goes straight into your operations. Your energy charge, which is the charge per kilowatt hour, is split. 24% of that goes into your operations. 76%, which is that embedded fuel cost, goes to pay for your bulk power cost, and then the entire PCA adjustment every month goes to pay for your bulk power costs. Here is your electric department budget for next year. As you can see, there's a pretty healthy increase in both revenue and expenditures, primarily driven by bulk power cost expenses, but we do have some increases in our operations and our depreciation. Most of the operations expenses are related to increased cost, new staff, those sorts of things. We are showing that we're going to generate a income next year, about $35,000. However, all of that income is dedicated to capital projects for expansion in your electric system. As the Commission's aware, unlike in your water wastewater system where you collect development fees that pay for development of the system for future expansion, we do not have any sort of development fee in the electric system. So any expansion or upgrades to the system have to come out of our profits. So these $35,000 that we're showing as a profit will go back into expansion and enhancement of the system.
Where is or have we shown anything related to the $100,000 that we had got from FMPA on a credit, and how much are we sitting on for the what's the fund where we're over collect, under collect?
It's the rate stabilization fund.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I think we have just over 1 month of a bill in there, so about $200,000. Our goal was to get to about at least 1.5 months or 2 months of collection in there to cover in case of an emergency where we can't collect. But
Okay.
as far as the FMPA, I'll defer to the manager. I know it's not in this current budget.
Okay. Where's that sitting?
We are due a credit from FMPA for overpayment. And really, it's a normal thing when we pay for transmission. At every couple of years, there's a true up on, they're only allowed to charge actual costs. So I'm not sure the magnitude of that credit, but FMPA, give me 1 second, I'll find it. I got it right here in front of me. It came from Bob Rupel. Maybe I misspelled his name. There's Steve Rupel. But that's old stuff. Did I spell his name wrong? I mean, it came in yesterday. Well, it must be a different one. This one's $2,300. So we have another one that's just shy of 100,000.
Right.
So generally,
Have we got that? Or
we have not received a check. We're awaiting that, and the commission has latitude. Typically, it goes into our bulk power cost, and it just goes into the rate stabilization fund because it was associated with bulk power. It was an overpayment into the bulk power. But the commission does have latitude to make a decision to move that money out and put it elsewhere into the system if they would like to. So we don't have a slide prepared for that, but maybe at the August 23rd meeting, which Dallas won't be at, I'll have that information and I'll give you some alternatives. I'll give you alternatives on that at our next budget workshop.
Just as a suggestion or a thought as part of that process, as the manager stated earlier, on the State Road 26 Twin Pairs project, anything that is considered replacement with like kind is potentially the design and the construction funded with state dollars, not city dollars. If there's anything that's considered a betterment, that is not DOT funding eligible. So as the finance director indicated, we don't have development fees that pays for expansion of facilities outside of what a developer constructs. So it would be a suggestion to bank that money to go towards any of those potential betterments associated with that project.
Good idea. But we'll get that added to the August 23rd agenda and make sure you have the exact amount and some staff recommendations for how it could be spent.
Sierra, could you put a degree or two up on the thermostat for this shape?
All right. Continue on to your electric capital improvements. This year, the majority of the capital improvements proposed are programmatic items that we do every year. Those items that don't have a depreciation next to them are those items that we're funding out of that surplus revenue. A big ticket item this year in the electric department is the replacement of an aerial truck in the electric department, $200,000. Questions, move on.
Was that part of the work, was that not funded?
In your electric, in your utilities, you don't have a VERF because the depreciation is accounted for. So a large portion of that truck will be paid for out of depreciation. Whatever we've set aside for the truck it's replacing, we'll reuse, and then the difference will come out of your reserves.
What, how much is set aside?
It's $200,000, but
Is that the difference from what's already been?
no, that's the total expense. Yeah, if I remember correctly, it's like 160 is what's in depreciation, so 40 would come out of reserves. Well, it'd come out of your reserves.
Out of
Electric department
electric
reserves.
reserves, not
Yeah.
general fund reserves.
Correct.
That's why it gets, talk about pots.
Yeah, gotta be careful when you say pots of money, though.
Colors of money.
There you go.
All right.
Accounts.
We have 2,000 accounts, so let's not go into that. Anyways, rate increases, fun stuff. We are proposing a modest rate increase in the electric system. It's about a 1.8% increase on the rate. However, we are also showing that we'll have a decrease in our bulk power cost next year. So we are proposing a decrease in your PCA. The rate increase is about $2 a month to a customer. However, the decrease in the PCA is about $1.50. So the net impact to the customer is about 50 cents a month for the average residential electric customer. So you can see the rate increase there is from 0.101 to 0.103. Like I said, it's a 50 cent a month net increase to the customer on their bill. Proposing similar rate increases across the board in all of our customer classes. For your non-residential class, similar rate increase, similar impact of 50 cents a month. For your non-residential three-phase, again, same process, same increase. For your residential demand customers, slightly larger increase of 2.7%. Average impact to those customers is about $33 a month. However, again, it's less than a 3% increase to their total bill. And these do keep our rates still lower than most of our competitors in the demand category.
This three phase, is this only dealing with like Argos, Southern Fuel?
Argo, since
this right here.
the majority of our demand in three-phase customers are ourselves and the school board. We do have a few non-governmental customers,
Hitchcock.
Watson, Hitchcock's,
Watson's,
And
Hitchcock.
Southern Fuel would.
Southern Fuel.
But their average bill is, $2,000 to $3,000 a month. So while it's a 33% increase, $33 increase, which would be pretty significant on a residential bill.
It
it's
ain't
still-
much on 3,000.
It's not as much on 3,000, correct.
It's about
It's about,
2.7%.
that's very,
Good.
very astute.
I think we can handle one mic there and one mic here.
I'm sorry.
Your electric rate comparison, this slide in here is showing you that while we are proposing rate increases, our average rate this year compared to 10 years ago, at least in the municipal average, is about $20 less. So our customers are paying $20 less a month for their electricity today than they were 10 years ago. That's primarily due to the cost of our bulk power from FMPA coming down pretty drastically. As you can see, municipal averages and Newberry's average is actually $27 down. Municipal average in general is $20 down. And then you can see that investor-owned utilities such as FPL have actually gone up about $4 in that same time period. So we've reduced our rates to our customers by $27 in 10 years, and the private utilities have increased their rates.
That's good, that's facts, that's actual money that went down.
Yes, sir.
Fuel cost increase.
It could, absolutely.
Back then, fuel cost was much higher than it is now, or was about a year ago, but as fuel cost increased, so we only, it's gonna be,
For every $1 increase in the cost of natural gas, our fuel costs go up $7. That's just straight math. So, natural gas has been at an all-time low for the last 2 or 3 years because of a mining technique called fracking. But when pipelines are shut down and fracking is stopped, power costs all over the United States are going to go up dramatically.
Any questions on the electric system? All right. Moving right along to the water utility. Again, we base our revenue estimates based off the number of customers and number of gallons sold in these 3 classes. Again, we got a couple of charts showing you that we have more customers than we did last year, and we have more consumption than we did last year. However, interestingly enough, several years ago, the commission made the hard decision to restructure our rates and go to a conservation rate, where the rate increases the more you use. The thought process behind that was to lower the consumption of our residents to help save water. As you can see, that action by the commission has had the very clear intended consequences have occurred, where in 2017 our average customer was using about 7,000 gallons of water per month, and in 2021 that had dropped by 700 gallons a month to 6,300 gallons a month. So 10% decrease in about 4 years. So our residents are definitely conserving water.
And just a reminder that that was a permit requirement in our water use permit by the Water Management District. They didn't tell us exactly what to do. They did tell us to put in a conservation rate structure. Ours is very effective.
This is a graph compiled by a third-party entity that shows the average cost of water and wastewater bills across the state of Florida. As you can see, the average, I believe this is from 2019, 2020? 2019. The average cost across the state of Florida for utilities is about $95. The city of Newberry is well below that in the 70s, 60s, in the 60s. Water operations, as you can see, we have increases in our revenue offset by increases in our expenses. Those are primarily driven by those costs we described earlier with the water permit, as well as increased expenses. We have based these rates off of a 3% increase. We are showing a loss in the water system of about $13,000. As the commission knows, any year on which we do not generate sufficient revenues to cover our expenses, we underfund our depreciation that year and don't put the full amount into our depreciation. So our plan this year would be to underfund the depreciation by that difference. As I mentioned, these revenues are based off a 3% rate increase. If the commission wanted to go to a break-even rate, that would require a 4.82% rate increase. In your development fees, big change. Yes, sir.
How many years have we, in a row, have we come in at a deficit?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. It's been a couple of years in a row, but it's nothing drastic. A few thousand, $10,000.
It seems like we used to come in massively. Now we're coming in 12, 15.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, my first several years as finance director, we didn't fund depreciation
At all.
at all. And so recently, we've been funding it, 90%, 95%, depending on the year. And then we turn around and spend that depreciation back into your system.
Be interested to know, where our depreciation should be, because funding depreciation was one of the first big fights that I had as commissioner. I'm fine with taking 12,000, but over the course of the last decade, I'd just be interested to know how much should we have in the depreciation versus what we do have, because we keep less now, but we're still doing it. And on principle, I think we should be breaking even. I understand in a budget this big, 12,000 is probably pretty good, but one of the reasons why we're having to take out debt service and go after grants and all those kind of things, because we haven't put the money aside that we were supposed to be, and that's not just water and electric, and that's across the board, that's why we have the BRF, that's why we're doing the things that we're doing. But it's another thing, I just want to keep our attention, anytime we're taking out depreciation, that's a quick stroke of the pen fix for a financial problem, but it also is kicking the can down the road. Maybe a $12,000 kick, it may be a $200,000 kick, but we're still pushing a problem to the future. So, well, and at 12,000, I'd certainly, I think 4.82 is too much to go in a given year. I think 3 is, you're pushing right at the edge of how much you want. That's why we always talk about doing small bites here and there, so that we don't get into a position where we got to go up 5, 6, 7% all at one time. Tim?
I'd also make the comment that 3% on a water bill is a lot different than 3% on an electric bill. So, what's our average water bill-ish?
60s.
The 3% increase is on average 73 cent a month increase to our residents.
3% is 73 cents. Our average water bill is $25 a month. That's 3% of that, 73 cents.
Our proposed average water bill will be $24.39 a month. That includes the 3% increase, which is the, it's not $25, Mike, it's $24.39. With our 3% increase, we still offer the lowest rates in our area.
Where were you headed with that thought, Tim?
I don't think trying to get it to the break even is outside the scope of what we can manage, to be honest. You're talking, what did you say, 73 cents?
Mhm.
So we need another a little over 1.5 points, 0.75.
To get to break even, you
got
need
to
1.8% increase,
Yeah,
another 1.8.
and what would that make a difference of?
It'd be another
$1.20?
It'd be another 35 cents, so we'd be right
Right.
at $1 off forever.
I'm okay with that.
Jamie, why are we down 13? Is this just normal fluctuations of? Yeah, we have to guess at what people are going to use. I get it. That's why generally we're in this range. You're saying, okay, we did a pretty good job guessing.
Yeah, we
Right.
used to call it in the float, because, in a budget this big, you're estimating usage, you're estimating expenses, any fluctuation. This year has been kooky as it can be, because if you can even get materials, PVC pipe parts is up 27%. So, this is staff's best estimate on revenue generation versus expenses, trying to anticipate what may or may not happen within your system.
And you do, and if you look at the adopted fiscal year 21 budget, you budgeted a profit of $17,000. So over the course of the 2 years, you breaking even. Last I checked the profit and loss this year, you're on track more than break even in your water system. 2021 was an interesting year to budget for because all of our revenues were based off of 2020, where our residential sales went through the roof because everybody was at home using all their water, but our commercial sales went through, the schools, which are a big customer of ours, plummeted because there were no kids in school for 6 months. So, but we are on track this year to turn a small profit in your water system this year.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you'd mentioned that earlier about, seems like every year. Best I can recall, I'd have to do the research, we're probably about break even. Some years we're plus 10,000 in water and some years we're minus 10,000. The way we do our rate projections are that, a penny change in in the rate can actually shift the number 10,000, so you can't really get any tighter than what we do. This particular one, we stopped at 3%. We didn't try a 3.1% rate increase because I felt like that the trade-off between a negative $13,000 differential between revenues and expenses, I consider that to be in the noise, and that anything more than 3% was starting to push test the limits of the community and the commission. So we stopped there. If we had tried to go to 3.1, we may have come in at plus 5,000, and we could do that if that's the commission's desire. We can zero in, but sometimes, like I said, when you're trying to get one more penny, you can't do it. You have to give a half a penny, and that could result in someone ending up with a bill that is a half a penny. So we try to keep it in round numbers when we're doing estimating, and sometimes that gets us plus or minus a few $1,000s.
Mr. Mayor, if the commission was interested if you went to the 4.82% increase, the average bill would increase $1.16 a month.
And is a 4% split the difference? Because it's, part of my concern is, again, it's always you keep it at 3 this year, and then next year you come back and say, well, now we're under even more, and now we got to go up to. So again, I'm in favor of stepping. And I think Commissioner Martin's making a good point about keeping our brains separate about percentages for different things. So, if in the interest of making sure next year we don't have another negative $10,000-$12,000, what is 4%?
Mr. Mayor, 4% would be a 95-cent a month increase for your average customer, and it would drop your deficit to just over $6,000 deficit.
And I think it's less about the deficit this year and more about the position it puts us in moving forward.
Also for the commissions, now a 4% increase would still keep you as very much the lowest utilities in the area.
Mr. Mayor, I like that proposal from my standpoint, and that's where I was actually sitting here waiting as of, just wondering if we could just split the difference, and I think that would be perfect solution.
I got 2 head nods.
We'll do it.
Okay.
Moving into your development fees, only reason I'm stopping here is this year we do not have any debt service proposed in your development fees because the commission made the decision to pay off your existing SRF debt. So we don't currently have any debt service in the water system. However, if the commission decides to move forward with the elevated storage tank, we would go and get an SRF loan to pay for that. I believe that's about $125,000 a year debt service. I did just check the SRF rates for water system loans, and they are 0.02%. So I don't think you can get very much better of an interest rate than that. 0.02. Going into your capital investments, on this page you have mostly your annual programs that Jamie and his team complete every year in maintaining your system. On this next page you have some of the larger items, capital items, including designing and permitting some water main expansions, the elevated storage tank project, State Road 26 projects that we mentioned earlier, and the Twin Pairs project. We've already spoken about rates, so we will bring you back at your public hearing. It's a 4% rate increase, which will be a 95-cent impact to your residential customers, and will maintain you as the lowest utility rates in the area. We'll bring back equivalent rate increases for your non-residential and your irrigation. Here's your peer comparison. We'll be slightly off, but again, we will still maintain the lowest residential rates, and I believe we're the second lowest, maybe close to the second lowest non-residential rates. Let's hope not. Are there any other questions on the water system?
Let's pause there. Do we have any public comments, questions on anything we've heard tonight? None? All right,
All right.
moving on, wastewater.
Moving on into our wastewater system, continuing the trend that we have more customers, and that means we have more use. In our wastewater system, we are proposing a 3% rate increase. Again, we need a 3.72% rate increase to break even, so $6,000 loss. As the manager and assistant manager mentioned earlier, these expenses are almost entirely driven by those permit requirements, as well as just the cost of doing business these days. There's not anything additional that we're proposing outside of those requirements.
I'd point out that in depreciation, you can see that our expenses are going up $20,000. That's because we took on new assets within the year that have an annual depreciation value that total $20,000. I think that's good news to the commission and the community that we recognize that as we take on new assets that we need to depreciate at a much higher rate. And I could tell you in my experience, I don't know another city under 10,000 people that funds depreciation at any level, and we fund it regularly in excess of 95%.
And primarily, the increases are driven by developer contributions to the city, the new developments that come into the city that build the utility systems and then dedicate those to the city, come onto our books, and then we must start depreciating them. And there's a little bit of lag there between when we book them onto our books to raise depreciation and when we start seeing those rate dollars come in to pay for that depreciation.
But that increasing amount for depreciation is a built-in rate increase for us. Now, typically, those new customers come on and cover that difference. So the new customers associated with those new developments will come on and cover that distance. So it's not, I guess that's not the part of a rate increase. That's not the driver of we need more money for our existing customers. Like the fact that those depreciation costs are going up annually are, it's a constant battle for us to make sure we keep up with it. It's also an assurance to our residents that as our assets wear out, that we're going to have a funding source so that we can replace them and not hit them with big ticket items that we can't afford.
Jamie.
Just to kind of expand on what the manager said, I've spent my entire adult life working in water and wastewater utilities. I was amazed when I accepted a position here that the city commission and staff for the city of Newberry had funded depreciation whatsoever. Like Mike said, it's rare. It's the right thing to do, because even if you do that with inflation and just the cost of materials, by the time you get to the used and useful lifespan, even if you've done depreciation like you should, you don't always have the funds to replace the asset. But most communities don't do it at all. They just figure they'll figure it out when they get there. I was pleasantly surprised, and the city of Newberry should be commended for that.
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
Well, it's just extremely rare. I've never seen it in any utility I've worked at or any utility I've been associated with. It's the right thing to do, but it's rare.
It just seems so logical.
I remember sitting on the dais, first time hearing that we didn't do it, and what are we doing?
I'll tell you, it predated me and it predated Jamie, so
can't get any credit for it. But those of you that were here whenever those decisions were made, you're in rare air. Thank
I'm good with this.
In your restricted development fees, no big changes there. And there's a mistake that I've written here, but the majority of your development fees collected go to pay for the debt service for your existing wastewater plant, and then we use a small portion of them for capital projects. Your capital investments in the wastewater system, again, the majority of these are programmatic projects that are completed every year. This is where you can see those depreciation dollars being spent back into the system. We do have a rehabilitation of lift station number 13 this year, as well as those, the wastewater expansion project towards the lift station towards the east of town, the Twin Pairs projects, and then the big one there is the wastewater treatment plant expansion project. We do have a replacement truck. It'll actually be split between your water and wastewater departments. That is to replace an existing work truck that's at the end of its life.
Just for my knowledge here. So if we get on our depreciation fund, we got all this money, and we're gonna use it to here, we can use ARPA money, which we got 600,000 left. Would that leave us with our depreciation money? Instead of using it to do other projects or not?
Well, Mr. Mayor, you want to use your depreciation money every year to rebuild your assets. So every year we use those depreciation dollars we put aside to invest back into the system to replace what you're doing. I don't believe you can use ARPA money for
Well, and I
what we
think,
currently use depreciation for, because it's intended to build new assets.
okay, so like the extension project could be used.
We are using ARPA for the extension.
You are
project.
using it,
Mhm.
so we couldn't use it for the rehab of a manhole
No, sir.
or the lift station, I mean?
You could use it to build a new manhole or a new
But
lift
not
station.
rehab anything. Okay, okay. That's, it's just,
developer fees, it couldn't say.
okay.
Yeah, it's
So it
similar
has
to
to be
impact
a
fees.
new project, and that's fine, I got it now.
In your wastewater rates, we're proposing a 3% wastewater rate increase, which would maintain you as the lowest utility in your group. That would be an average impact in your wastewater of $2.08 per month for your residential customers, providing the same increase across all rate classes. Average impact in a non-residential is $5.70 per month. That's the second lowest rates in our area. And here's your rate comparison showing that we are pretty substantially lower in residential rates, and then kind of in the middle of the, well, the non-residential rates are kind of all over the place, so it's kind of hard to tell where you are. But, and I believe that's it for wastewater. Any questions?
Good.
Any questions? Public?
Y'all are really doing a good presentation.
All right, I like it. 2 compliments in one night.
All right. We're moving into our smaller funds. The first is your mosquito control fund. This is the $1 a month we charge residents in the downtown area for mosquito control. Showing a $41,000 loss this year. However, that's primarily because we're purchasing a new truck, mosquito control truck. We have reserves enough to cover that. We do also show an increase in our operating expenses, but that's because we need to buy chemical this year, which we don't have to buy every year.
So that one I just seen on the last page,
It's a different truck.
different truck.
You, correction on what Dallas said, you're actually buying your first mosquito control truck, because although you've been in the mosquito control business for 25 to 30 years, the mosquito spraying has been performed by vehicles that belong to other departments. So the mosquito control department is actually going to buy its first vehicle ever. Have you
We'll
called
write
in
you
a complaint?
We'll write you a $12 check.
Does that, is that truck used for anything else, or is it specifically just mosquitoes?
It will be used for mosquito spraying, but it'll also be a pool vehicle when it's not being used for mosquito spraying.
Okay, so is that, the whole cost of the truck is coming out of this fund, but it's being shared with other funds? So shouldn't it be a shared expenditure through different departments, or is it all being shared within the?
Hello?
2,000 codes to deal with.
Its primary use is for mosquito control, and it'll be available for use when not being used for mosquito control. So it would be an appropriate expenditure out of your mosquito control fund.
Get the exact percentages of
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out why the mosquito fund isn't $2 instead of $1.
You've got
If we're
existing,
gonna-
you've got existing reserves. You've got cash reserves that will pay the difference. So you
Right.
don't need to raise your rates because we've been building those reserves to pay for it,
To-
capital outlay.
So we have a mosquito control reserve.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay,
it's its own
all right.
separate fund.
I
like the
thought you were
electric
talking
is.
about dipping into the general fund reserves.
No, sir, no. It'll be coming out of the
Okay.
mosquito control
Then
reserves.
I'm happy, okay. And spray Bonnie's house all over.
Maybe you pay state the shield money on that, I've got a little part-time job. I'm right around that time.
We got more than
You can do a
more than one opportunity for you on that second shift job. See me after the meeting.
You might have to give us a
Do you cut grass? Do you cut grass?
Anybody go along?
Because I
Make a
haven't.
lot more money than sitting here.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Moving on into our internal service funds, these are funds that operate like our utilities, however, our customers are ourselves. So we segregate the customer service department and utility admin, which is Jamie and his staff, and then we bill those costs back to the utilities so that if I buy a pencil in customer service, I don't have to divvy it up against 12 different departments. It all comes out of one department. So the first of those is your customer service fund. The increase here is primarily driven by a first full year of AMI cost, the network maintenance costs. So we had a partial first year this year, and then next year we'll have our first full year, so that's the difference there. In utility admin, the increases are primarily driven by the addition of that new assistant director, as well as this year the commission funded utility line locator and a purchasing specialist for a portion of the year, I believe about 9 months, 7 or 9 months. So this year you also have the full year of those salaries, which is primarily driving your increase there. So your total residential impact based off of the decrease in our electric power cost, our rate increase in electric, our 4% rate increase in water, a 3% rate increase in wastewater, would be an average impact to a residential customer of $3.53 per month.
and you've updated that with the full.
That is with the correct,
Yep. Bring it back.
You already got the 95 cents.
and I believe that is the end of our presentation.
63 slides later.
I do want to
Oh.
point out the manager went through 11 slides in 45 minutes. I went through 52.
It's a race.
Mike, tell me, AMI planning and with the staffing increases, the positions we have in here, how are we and what's our timeline to roll that out? Are we prepared from AMI, staffing wise?
I'll start, but I'll let our co-project managers from AMI are Jamie and Dallas, depending on which side of the house we're working on. But I would say that we are approaching deployment. We're gonna do some community educational forums coming up here shortly, and I think later in the fall, we'll start putting water meters and electric meters out. And we expect to be fully deployed by next April, up and running, fully deployed, completely up and running. From our field staff perspective, we're not going to see a reduction in labor costs simply because we're reallocating the people that were reading meters, linemen, the most expensive meter readers in the history of meter reading. Now they're going to be doing linemen's work, the full month instead of a partial month, and reading meters a partial month. So we won't realize labor costs, but we are seeing a reduction in costs for meter relocation and for meter expenses, and that's reflected in this year's budget. So overall, there's a trade-off. We have some costs associated with operating an AMI system that is being offset by an increased productivity for our electric department and reductions in meter replacement costs. I think probably more specifically to your question about how close we are and what it's going to look like in terms of deployment, I think either Jamie or Dallas is probably better equipped to answer that fully.
Mr. Mayor, we're currently working on the integration side. We've just started having weekly meetings on integrating the AMI meters into our existing utility billing system. We have lots of really fun conversations about how that's going to work. We also have standing meetings every week on the project status. I believe Jamie can speak to it more. We just started receiving our first article meters and testing those. Speaking from a staffing point, in customer service, we're not going to see any changes in staffing, but it'll be a change in what we do. We've had a lot of conversations internally and with Census and Quanta about with the AMI system, we'll be able to be much more proactive in contacting customers about high bills and leak detection and controlling their bill, as opposed to now where we're 45 days behind, we get to call you. So having those conversations with our billing specialists about every day coming in, looking at leaks, contacting customers, instead of trying to do an entire month's bills for a month. My customer service team is very excited about AMI, and I'm very excited about the opportunity it's going to give our customers to take control of their bills and for the data we'll be able to provide our customers.
And before Jamie finishes out the staffing, are we going to be able to, because does AMI have its own app that people can open up with their account and handle those things? Is that going to be integrated with the city's app, so it's a one-stop shop?
We're working currently on what's called a single sign-on. So customers who currently use our web portal to pay their bill and look at their bill will be able to log into that same portal and click a link that'll take them to their AMI dashboard. So it's a one-stop shop.
On a desktop service, what about on a mobile service?
It's mobile friendly. Our current utility app is mobile friendly.
Okay.
And the census portal will be mobile friendly as well.
Okay.
We've been receiving materials for a little better than 3 months. There has been some challenges with supply chain issues, and that's caused some delays in the procurement of items. We're working through that. The base stations have currently been deployed on both elevated water towers, electric work done associated with that. That's assisting in the process to stand up, the back office system and start the integration piece with your billing system. We're anticipating that we will be seeing the installers here in late September, early October, and that the actual installation should start, and as Mike said, should be complete by April. We have been for the past 4 months doing every bit of pre-work we could do, adjusting boxes and making arrangements for the AMI, basically antenna for water meters and whatnot. So anything that we can do prior to the installers actually getting here, we've been doing that in between our regular scheduled work in advance to try to ensure we're as ready as we possibly can be.
We are planning, to Jamie's point about the base stations, tomorrow in the daylight, if you look at our water towers, you'll see a whole litany of antennas have been installed. Those are the base stations that'll actually be talking to our water meters. So you can see the first step there. We are planning in September or October, supply chain, depending on installing all of the city's AMI meters first. That way, because the city has every kind of account you can imagine, that'll give my team and Jamie's team and Census and ADG a chance to work out all the bugs, because we don't mind messing up our own accounts. But we'll have a training period there where we can all see how AMI is actually working with real live data on real live customers. Those customers will just happen to be the city. Once we're happy with how that works, we'll schedule deployment of the rest of the accounts. But after that initial test period on city accounts is when we'll have AMI days. We're currently planning for AMI days to be at the end of October or the beginning of November.
Those are public days.
Yeah,
People come in,
it'll be a
train.
Saturday public meeting at the municipal building. We'll have computers set up that'll actually have real live data. It'll be the city's accounts. So customers can go in and see what the portal looks like, see what kind of data they'll have. My customer service staff will be there. They'll have had enough time to train on the system to show customers the availability. We'll have the meter demo board there with all the different meters so customers can see what the meters are going to look like. And then following that Saturday is a city commission meeting. And at that city commission meeting, we'll have a similar demonstration for the city commission from Census and Quanta, again, using real-life data from real-life customers before we start deploying into the field for residents.
I think it would be good when we start doing those, let's see if we can partner with the library and get them trained, because I think a lot of people go to the library and use them as a resource. Hey, I've seen this. Can you help me navigate? The library has computers. I think we might want to really train Latasha, because she's at the MLK, got a computer lab there. People want to come in there and ask questions. You know, I think we need to try to figure out, because it's great to get the system in, but if no one knows it's there, no one knows how to use it, we're not going to realize it. And it sounds like you guys are miles ahead of me in this planning already, which is perfect. But let's make sure that it's not just us trying to train if we can. Let's see if we can include a greater part of the community in that.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. We're going to do everything we can. Part of what's in my current year's budget is we've engaged a marketing firm. Part of the marketing firm's job is not only to tell people it's coming, but we've contracted for them to create 2 videos for us that show here's what AMI is, also here's how to go online and set up your account, with the thought process of that we can use those videos going forward and put it on our website, put it on our Facebook constantly and say, here's how to go do it. We've also, in their contract, are flyers and informational brochures that we can continue to use and go forward. We can put them at the library and our festivals. And the other thing we've been working on is, as you know, last year we implemented a live chat feature on our website. We've recently been working on the process of screen sharing through live chat, with the thought process of being, once we get AMI, you can call customer service and they can actually screen share your computer and walk you through the system as well. But we'll absolutely make sure we reach out to all those other agencies as well.
Dallas, we were discussing at one point having a computer set up in the lobby that customers could come in and our staff could coach them up right here at City Hall. Is that still the plan?
Our current thought process, due to sizing constraints of our library, not our library, our lobby, our library is also very small, and that we don't have one, is we'll probably add where the cash drawer that's closest to us, there's 2 cash drawers at the front lobby, but there's one that someone sits at and there's a second one. The one that's closest to us, we'll probably add a monitor on the outside of the glass that faces a customer, that a customer service rep can work on their computer and the monitor would duplicate to the customer. And so the customer and the CSR could talk and the customer could see what's happening. I don't think, unless we rearrange stuff, that we really have enough room in our lobby to do like a kiosk type situation. In our new City Hall, we will absolutely have those abilities, but in this one, we'll be able to stand there and walk a customer through the system.
Does that create any privacy issues with having something facing out into the lobby that would be showing someone's private information?
We would only show it when the customer is there, when no one's there, and we would have that conversation with the customer first. I'm going to pull up your account.
They're not just one person.
Yeah. We would have those I'm going to pull up your account. Are you okay with me? It'll display on the screen. And if they're not, we could.
Put the cover over the sugar.
Yeah. Well, if the customer is not comfortable, we could walk them through a city account and say, this isn't your real account, but this is how you do it. When you get home, you can, because we don't care if people see the city's information.
Not everyone has a computer at home either.
And one of the things we've been talking about in customer service a lot is how what we can do for the customer. If a customer wants to call us and say, I'm not going to go on the website and sign up for alerts, we'll take care of that for you. Yes, ma'am, we'll set those alerts up for you.
We
Jamie?
got the blackout so you can't see it sideways, you just see it right where you are.
The demo board kind of,
Well, just, they do have to, we can
Yeah.
implement that, where you can't have information be from sideways.
well, the demo boards that Dallas spoke of that will be as part of the AMI days, they are powered up with the electrometers. They will be live with water on them. So you can not only see, the customer can not only see, but it serves a dual purpose. As the first articles, as they call them, come in, we actually put the meters in these demo boards and make a demonstration or ensure that the meters are programmed to do the functions that we want them to do. And the second thought with the city route, like Dallas said, if we're going to inconvenience somebody, we're going to inconvenience ourselves, not a customer. And one of the best things about working with the owner's engineer in this process, Quanta, is they are absolutely adamant with the vendor and with us, quite frankly, that nothing will be installed, nothing will go live until it's been performance test to the best of our ability, to the strictest protocol that you can come up, that we have tried to anticipate and work every single bug out of it. And we want it to be successful. We want it to be something that the customers use and that we validate it as best we can.
So everything goes well, April, the customer is ready to utilize this.
April will be fully deployed. Everything goes well, we will start deploying to customers as soon as October.
Okay.
But as that process occurs, you know, the city now has routes, and so we have to continue to operate and build. So the goal to schedule with the installers is you deal with every electrometer or every water meter in that route. They are now AMI, can be billed AMI. If for some reason that you can't complete that, you've got to excise that out and create another route. So there will be people in October potentially, November, December, January, right on, that eventually we work all the way up to full deployment in April. And we have, you know, done some work on our routing so we can accomplish some things with the school during Thanksgiving break and Christmas break, so we don't cause, you know, an issue with, you know, supplying utilities to the school while it's in session.
Lonnie?
Whenever, if somebody pays through this application, are they going to be charged a fee for using it?
Mr. Mayor, there's nothing changing in our payments. So the payments will still continue to go through our existing system, and our existing fees will still apply. Currently, the commission has decided that we do charge a fee for use of a debit or credit card. It's a tiered fee. Most of our customers pay between $3 and $4 to use that convenience. We do not charge a fee if a customer goes online and pays with an e-check, or if they sign up for auto draft from us. So we are trying to coach our customers to go to e-checks, because the fee is, it's not free, the city pays for it, but it's a much more reduced fee that the city has to cover.
But the AMI is just empowering the customer to see their bill and make choices, especially I go on vacation, pipe bus, I get a notification, hey, you used 500 gallons of water at 10 o'clock in the morning, that's unusual.
And the city will get those notifications, and part of our job every morning will be looking at those and calling you. And so even if you don't have the notification set up, you'll get a phone call from our customer service team that says, hey, Mr. Marlowe, it looks like you're using a lot of water. Do you know what's going on?
Sip.
You don't think you use the water, or that we'll call you? Well, it definitely won't happen because he's not one of our customers.
Mr. Mayor, I'm glad you asked the question, and I want to commend you guys. I mean, that sounds like you guys have really taken ownership of rolling this out, and I mean, you guys have got a lot of boxes checked. I think that's fantastic, so good job on that. Do you anticipate all the Avalon Woods, is that going to sync up where they start? Will they be able to get the AMI meters right out of the gate?
Mr. Mayor, what we've done on the water side, so we did not continue to buy the other type water meters that we had that would not be compatible with our AMI system. We went ahead and over the past 60 days, we've been installing the brand we selected capable AMI water meters, but it's not fully AMI yet. If we were to put that AMI module on, it would cause a problem with our billing. Short answer to your question, as soon as the water lines are approved there, the meters we install, the water meters that we install in there, will be AMI capable and the right brand.
Just want to make sure that since we're rolling out this fiscal year, this budget reflects success for that project, and we're doing what we need to do to be successful there. And I agree with Commissioner Martin. I commend the thought and the planning that you guys have put into this. Please pass that on to the team, to folks who are working on this, whether they're paid contractors or city employees. Let them know we appreciate that. And I think it's, as soon as we get to these days, it's going to be on us to help communicate that and get it out to the community as well. Make sure they're well attended, because I think we stand to, if we can have this whole thing deployed by April, that'd be fantastic. But we want folks to know it. We want them to utilize it. We want them to see the value in that surface. And remember, this is also going to open up the doors to peak electric billing. I mean, there's a whole, once we're here, there's going to be other options for the customer to empower them as well moving forward.
Good to see it come to fruition.
Yes, it is. Long, 4 years ago she started this? 5 years ago. So any last questions, comments before Jamie?
Well, I was just gonna say, this is the foundation for your AMI system. We get it deployed, we get it working like it needs to, and folks are familiar, and you have the opportunity to build from there. What the items you listed.
Exciting stuff. Exciting times ahead. Mr. Judy, you got any comments? Last comments? Public, got any final comments? Everybody drive safe in the rain. Thank you for attending tonight. We are adjourned.